Hi, everybody. This is the latest of the CoCoTax virtual speaker series. And I'm asking everyone, since you're all muted, if you have questions, please use the chat feature. And I will monitor those as they come in, and our speaker will address them at the end of her presentation, unless it's something that needs an immediate clarification, and I will hopefully not rudely interrupt. So thank you all for joining in today. I'd like to introduce you to Rhovy Lyn Antonio from the California Apartment Association, and she'll be talking about tenant protections and rent control and related matters. So Rhovy, thanks for being with us. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, everybody. Good afternoon. Rhovy Lyn Antonio with the California Apartment Association. I handle our organization's local public affairs program, overseeing issues in the Peninsula, San Mateo County, as well as Contra Costa County in the East Bay. Had the pleasure of meeting your leadership and as well as members of the CoCoTax over the past year and a half since I've taken over some issues in Contra Costa County, and have been a great coalition partner with this organization on some issues regarding private property rights, home ownership, and so forth. So wanted to give this group an update regarding an upcoming proposition that we are seeking the organization support on, which is Prop 22. And so wanted to share some information on what that is and answer any questions you guys may have. So let me share my screen. Okay, so what I'm presenting today is some information that came from the Prop 21 campaign, which is the Californians for Responsible Housing, regarding the amendment to the Costa-Hawkins Act, which is what we are calling a flawed initiative that will make the housing crisis worse. I wanted to talk to you guys about this information on this Prop 21. If it sounds familiar to you, it's because it's already been heard. If you can remember, take you back on a history lesson brief history lesson in 2018, there was a proposition called Prop 10. And Prop 10 seek to overturn the state's rental Costa-Hawkins Protections Act, and would have put statewide rent control in California. So that was a voter initiative that was sponsored by Michael Weinstein, which is the president of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And after a robust campaign and educating the voters, it was rejected overwhelmingly in the state of California by nearly 20-point margin. Voters said no. Since then, there has been a statewide rent control that was put in place that was crafted with some key stakeholders on both sides, that was more balanced and sought to address some level of fairness between the property owners and also the tenant advocates. That wanted to also point out that in Contra Costa County, I am sharing with you that in 2018, Prop 10 was defeated overwhelmingly, very close to the 20-point margin that we saw statewide. Contra Costa County voters rejected it by a 59.90, overwhelmingly a landslide rejection of Prop 10 statewide rent control. So what does this Prop 21, what will it do, and how is it different than the original Prop 10? Not much. There's not a lot of difference. What it does is that it still repeals state's rental housing law that's discouraging rental investment in rental housing. And just so you guys know, we have had the state law that protects the investments of rental housing for over 30 years, and Prop 21 seeks to overturn that. It will treat regular homeowners like corporate landlords because it will actually allow price controls on single-family homes. Right now, local jurisdictions are prohibited from putting any type of price controls on single-family home because of the Costa-Hawkins Rental Act, a law that we've had for over 30 years. If Prop 21 is to pass, that protection will be lifted, and local authorities will have the authority to go after single-family homes and place price controls on them. But most importantly, significant issue with the Prop 21 is that it will allow for permanent price controls, price restrictions on properties, even when a property becomes vacant. This is because it's going to overturn and eliminate vacancy decontrol. Right now, under Costa-Hawkins Act, local authorities are prevented from placing permanent price controls on rent-controlled units. So, for example, if there is a rent-controlled jurisdiction, let's just pick San Francisco, and the rents are capped at a certain percentage rate. If the tenant moves out and it becomes vacant and a new tenant comes in, the property owner has the authority to bring that up to what the market can bear. So they can price it to what the going rate is in the market. If Prop 21 is passed, that ability will be removed. And so what will happen is tenants who are living in the units who move out, the next tenant will be under the same price structure that the previous tenant, even if that price had been depressed for over 10 years because the tenant had been living there for multi-years. So that is essentially going to place New York style type of permanent price restrictions on rental units, and that will discourage a lot of rental property owners from putting their units up the market, knowing that they will never have an opportunity to recoup the cost of operating their units when they have a permanent price caps once a tenant moves in. But what I want to point you to is what this proposition won't do. There's still no protections for renters or veterans or the disabled. The proponents will tell you that this is an affordable housing measure that will protect these vulnerable populations, but there's nothing in the initiative language that will actually protect renters, veterans, or the disabled. And there's also no funding or no requirement from any jurisdictions to build affordable housing, and no plans to address the homelessness on our streets. And there's also no provision, no language that will seek to reduce the rents in the long run. There's a lot of negative impacts if this is passed, not just a statewide catastrophe of no housing being built, but most importantly, the negative impacts for individual cities. It will definitely worsen our housing crisis, because right now we should be focused on creating more housing and making sure that even during this time that we're still building enough supply so that when the demand is there again, we have the supply and the housing stock to meet that demand. And property tax. So let's talk about, as you all know, rent control depresses property tax values. There was a study done by the MIT researchers that found that property values are reduced by 20% when there is a rent control scheme. So with Prop 21 passing, and local cities are able to put on strict versions of rent control, we are going to see the 20% and reduction in property values. So what that will mean is that will be less money that will go to the individual cities to pay for general fund like fire safety, police, streets, parks, and general appropriations that are used to help run the cities. And also, there will be less funding for local services as a result of this reduced home property values. And that will also have an impact on schools. As you know, schools also get a cut of property values. And right now, as you know, especially given what's happening with COVID-19 and now with the wildfires, we are facing, unfortunately, a severe recession. And our economy is heading that way. And it may be here for a long time. So this is not the time right now to be passing laws or lifting laws that has a negative impact on our economy in the state, regional, but also in the local level. So far, there has been over 90 organizations that has opposed this measure. I can proudly say that Prop 21 is being opposed by a very broad base group coming from labor, affordable housing, and the business sector, because they all know that this is a detrimental measure that is passed in California. Since this list has been published, we have also received the endorsement of an opposition from prominent media news groups like the Sacramento Bee, the Mercury News, and the local East Bay Times. So all those publications and more are urging their readers and any constituents reading the paper within that area to vote no on 21. So with that, I am ready to take some questions if you have any, and any clarifications that I could provide.
Okay, Rhovy, I did get a question that, and by the way, Contra Costa Taxpayers Association has also endorsed the opposition to the proposition. You mentioned New York style rental restrictions. Can you expand a bit on those restrictions? Where are they applied and what have been the economic consequences?
Sure. So, proponents of rent control has years said that, rent control in California is a little bit different because we have this notion of vacancy decontrol. And what that does is, even though a unit's price is depressed because you have you have price controls under you, you can recoup the cost when a tenant moves out. And that's because the Costa-Hawkins Rental Act that was passed in 1995 put in place a protection that local jurisdictions cannot put permanent price controls on any rent control program, that they have to allow that when a tenant moves out and becomes empty, that can go up to market. So Prop 21 will overturn that.
Who's sponsoring Prop 21?
I'm sorry?
Who is sponsoring Proposition 21?
Yes, the lead sponsor for Prop 21 is the Michael Weinstein, who is the president of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. He solely funded the signature gathering campaign that collected signatures via paid signature gatherers to put this on the November 2020 ballot. And he is the sole funder, actually at least the majority funder for this campaign. He was also the same proponent who pushed for Prop 10, this is essentially what this is. This is just a part 2 of it. In 2018, that was defeated by nearly 20-point margin. And sorry, one more thing, and just some information on Michael Weinstein and his position on housing, on why, you may be asking, why is the president of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation care about issues of housing on this? He has a history of opposing any type of new housings in Southern California. He is notorious for seeking litigation and seeking ballot measures to overturn any type of multifamily housing that is built or that is being proposed. So he has had a track record of opposing housing, which is why, under all of the what's being written about what is Prop 21 seeks to do, at the end of the day, if you pull the screen, it's all about killing housing in the state of California.
You and I have spoken a few times about some areas that are looking at what they're calling tenant protections in some of the cities in Contra Costa. Could you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've been involved in Contra Costa cities and or the county?
Sure. The narrative. I will be honest with you. There's a lot of sentiments out there. Everybody's very sympathetic and understands the renter's plight. Everybody's very sympathetic and will recognize and acknowledge that the cost of housing is very, very expensive everywhere. But the problem and the conversation that we're not having is, who pays for that? Who pays to solve that problem? And unfortunately, rental property owners are always being vilified and always, being looked at as the people to hold the purse. They are looked at as those who are responsible to provide the affordable housing and the tenant protection that is being looked at by different local jurisdictions. So, the issue is, how do we make sure that rental property owners are also being heard? the biggest challenge is that, rental housing advocates, tenant advocates are, they're not afraid to talk about their plight, and they come to the city council meetings to share their stories. But unfortunately, we don't see the same type of veracity from rental property owners. And that's where our organization comes in, to where we can help with that, with bringing people, property owners, a voice to the table, and helping educate our local elected leaders that, rental property owners are part of this community as well. They are housing providers, and that they should be listened to and heard when, some of the policies that are being considered has a negative effect on them.
The Judicial Council just, I believe yesterday, issued a statement regarding the moratorium on evictions. There was a statewide moratorium on evictions. Could you give us a little of the history of that and what changed yesterday or today? I guess it was yesterday.
Sure. I'll try to speak as much as I know about, because things are moving, rather quickly. But essentially, a few months ago, the Judicial Council had issued what we are, naming as Rule 1, which halted all types of evictions throughout the state. It included also evictions that were pending. And so that was as a response of making sure that people are sheltering in place and that no one is evicted during this pandemic. I understand that there were some legal challenges that were filed because of that ruling. The California Apartment Association was adamantly against that and issued several letters and emails and calls to the Judicial Council to let them know that having a blanket no evictions, even for tenants that were being disruptive, is not the right way. It's not the right approach. So from my understanding, it's going to be lifted. And it's not something that I have exactly the date of when it's going to be lifted, but from my last information, that ruling was lifted. It's going to be lifted as of September 1st.
I've got a follow-up question. Actually, and you may not be able to answer this. What is Michael Weinstein's reason or greater goal for sponsoring 21? I mean, you've told us what he's done historically, but do you have any idea what his ultimate goal is?
Well, looking at Michael Weinstein's past record on building it up on being anti-housing and opposing any type of housing developments, especially in Southern California, it is not obvious to see that he opposes housing throughout the state. And this Prop 21 he sees as a housing killer, and that is a goal that we see where he is motivated to get this thing passed. Because as we know, once you remove key elements of the Costa-Hawkins Act, which is, the vacancy decontrol, and putting permanent price caps on rental housing investments, I would have to ask, what type of housing investor would see California as desirable with all these restrictions? And would you invest housing in California or in other states where they don't have schemes such as, permanent price caps?
We also have a question that said, is there a law that requires local governments to provide affordable housing?
I don't know if there's a specific law. I can't answer that, but I know that when they are looking at their general plan and housing elements, they are being given guidelines that they have to plan to allow affordable housing within their jurisdictions.
Okay. And that word affordable, it means a lot to a lot of people in different ways. How does CAA look upon the term affordable housing?
We like to, it's different between each jurisdictions because it is income specific. You may have some jurisdictions within the rural areas that are, considered affordable, but then come on a different income level when you go to more of the urban areas. So I would say, we stick pretty much close to what the cities are defining as affordable based on what they're considering area median income, or AMI for short.
Do we have any other questions? a lot of territory in a very short time, which will make it easy for people watching the replay on our website. I'll take
Yeah.
one. Go ahead.
There is one thing that I wanted to make sure that I also give an update on, that's more pertaining locally for Contra Costa County, and that is that there is an existing regulations right now on rents as well as the eviction moratorium. So yes, we talked about the Judicial Council lifting their ban on all types of evictions. But there is the underlying local eviction moratorium in the entire Contra Costa County. So this is not just the unincorporated area, but all cities within the geographic area of Contra Costa County that has an eviction moratorium and I believe a rent freeze at expiring on September 30th. So that eviction moratorium, though, is a little bit different than the eviction moratorium that was issued by Judicial Council's Rule 1, because the county's eviction moratorium is related to only those that were impacted by COVID-19. And in their ordinance, and this is something that we assisted the county in developing to make sure that there was some fairness for rental property owners, there is a requirement that the tenant would have to prove the hardship and provide documentation that they are negatively affected by COVID-19 in order to have this eviction moratorium apply to them. The same thing also with the rent freeze. If you're looking at rent freeze, I see it as, rents control at 0%, because essentially the property owner is not able to raise any rents until this eviction moratorium is lifted. And right now we're looking at a September 30th expiration date, as determined by the last meeting of the Board of Supervisors, in aligning with the states. So that is currently at play right now. And the California Apartment Association is willing to help educate rental property owners who have properties in Contra Costa County that may need to understand this law and how it affects them. We have some resources and fact sheets on our website that you can look at to see if this applies to you.
Okay, last call for questions. Any closing statements, Rhovy Lyn? I think we're good. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and helping educate us on Prop 21. And so far, Contra Costa does not have rent control in effect anywhere, but we know that it's an ongoing debate. And so I expect we will continue our conversations with California Apartment Association and you in the future.
Thank you so much.
For anybody who tuned in late, the replay will be available on YouTube and on our website, www.CoCoTax.org. And we'll be happy to have that up in a day or two for you. And until then, I will thank everybody for tuning in. And I will say, please be safe, be healthy, be well informed. Till next time. Thanks for coming in.